So, my near death experience happened 25 years ago, almost 25 years ago. On June 5th in the year 2000, I died on the day that my daughter was born, not because of her birth, but because of a planned tubal ligation surgery that was scheduled about 3 hours after her birth. I had an extraordinary experience where I was given an epidural for her birth, and they kept the catheter in my back. And because of the planned surgery, they also gave me a spinal tap in preparation for that surgery. Now, I was supposed to be entirely awake, alert, totally conscious during that procedure. And the spinal block does exactly that. It blocks the signals of the spine so that there's no pain. And so I, again, was supposed to be entirely awake and alert. But because of the spinal block anesthesia, it was either given too much or it was too high in the spine that it stopped my heart and it stopped my breathing. So while they were wheeling me out of the room, I could see my mom holding my daughter, and I knew that somehow she was going to be okay. The last thing I remember was the anesthesiologist asking me if I was okay, and then I blanked out. I was out of body looking at myself being wheeled in a frantic chaos because I had started to go into a crash mode. Lungs stopped, my heart stopped, and the place in the hospital that I was located, the general surgery room for this type of surgery was located in a different part of the hospital on a different floor. And so while they were wheeling me, I was out of body, seeing myself in the hallway. And at first I didn't even recognize that it was myself. It seemed like it was a different person. And I was observing the entire chaos. They had to intubate me, which is put in one of the breathing tubes and help me breathe. They had to resuscitate me. And while I was watching this above myself in the operating room, I had no connection to it and it didn't bother me. I actually felt a sense of peace. In my experience, it wasn't as though I floated through a tunnel. I was hovering above my body, head to toe. And so I was overlooking myself, and it seemed as though I began to turn and elevate and levitate higher up into the ceiling. But simultaneously, it was this pure white light, like a pinpoint of white light that seemed to consume the entire room. And then I found myself in a place on the other side that was the brightest of the bright, the whitest of the white, like a million suns, but it did not burn my eyes. It was as far as I could see, but yet I could see nothing. And in that place, I knew and had a feeling of such utter love and peace. It was as though I could hear angelic singing and voices and music, but yet there was nobody there. It was like the very air and the atmosphere had this most angelic love and music and singing. I had an experience of, my name is Maria Guadalupe, and so I am named after one of the apparitions of the Blessed Mother. In my tradition, in my Catholic, Spanish Catholic upbringing, it's a very important part of our tradition. And I, in that space, began to see her appear. Larger than life, extraordinarily massive, about like a 5-story building is what it looked like to me. And she was translucent and ever so loving, with this communication that was without words. And knowing that I was not supposed to be there, I could see this most magnificent light in her heart center. And as I was looking at her and feeling all of this love, and begins, she was translucent, meaning that she was see-through. So I could see through her, and in her heart there was this like reddish light and this bluish light, but this most piercing white in the middle. And it was like that white light I knew was far off at the distance of what I call the God center of the universe. And through her, through this transparency, I could see this greater other being that felt very masculine, very present, very loving, very grounded. And that felt like Jesus to me. And it was more of a knowing than and a feeling, and their entwined hearts together. I knew that I wasn't supposed to be there, but I did not want to go back. And it was in that moment that that scene of with their most immense love and telling me that I'm not supposed to be there, because I did not want to return, it began to transform into this entire experience of the other side, where it is like it's not a location like buildings and places, but yet it had space that I could understand. And in front of me appeared a most miraculous being. I would call it like my angelic guide. It is the being who is forever tethered to me, my wise counsel. And every single one of us has that in life, that we have a being who is tethered to us to help us understand our life and guide us and helped us create our life before we ever got here. I didn't know that in the moment, but this being had appeared to me, and they appeared very loving, but yet a different energy was a little bit stern. And it felt like more of that wise guide, a counsel, a mentor, somebody to help me. But it also had like this sternness, not like it was punishing, but it was very clear, very direct, and making me face myself rather than this total love. It was, I love you, but let's look at what's happened here. So from that place, this vast whiteness began to transform, where the Blessed Mother and he began to like dissipate and kind of like, I want to say like disappear, but like go from my eyes sight, and this angelic guide was in front of me. And it was as though with thought and with intention, it was as though a space was appearing while we were simultaneously moving. And it felt as though there was this most incredible structure that was like a building, but it was like alive and vibrant. It was as though I had entered into a space to help me review, like a council chamber. From that place, this one magnificent being, and then suddenly appeared an additional 3 beings. These 3 beings were helping me to review my life and why I was even on the other side. It began in this space that appeared, this what we call the life review. And I had always assumed that we would be judged. That's what I was told, but that's not what happened. In that space with such loving beings, they were helping me look at my own life, of what got me there, what were the decisions that I made. And it was as though in this room, it was like a platform with a pedestal and a podium, and it was like a living book. And in this book, it was like these images would appear, and then they would stretch out like slices of time, like pictures. I could go into one of those slices of time and see it. And it was as though it could be cast onto this most incredible screen in front of me. And in this screen, it felt like it was a movie. But then when something challenging was occurring, it was as though it was like more holographic, that I could like step into it, experience what I was experiencing, understand what was happening. And when I could not understand what felt like when I was a victim, there was a moment when I had switched positions with this other person in this interaction, and it was as though I became them. It's like I had a clear understanding of their past, their hurts, their pains, and what made them, and how they were feeling, and what had caused. And it was too intense for my small human-like self to understand. So it kind of like a twist, because then I felt compassion for the person. I had understanding. And when I was going through one of the most difficult reviews, I had like this breakdown. I couldn't release the human imprint. I was still held on to a lot of pain. Like most people, we have violations that happen in life. And while I was reviewing it, I couldn't make sense of it. I couldn't fully let go and forgive and understand that. And that is when it transformed into another experience, that my one being always by my side, and I had arrived at a level that I needed assistance and healing. And it was like an attending of urgent care. And with my most magnificent guide, an additional and different 3 beings had appeared. And from those 3 beings, they, again, with thought and intention, it was as though the space around me transformed. It was as though we were moving automatically, but yet the space was also appearing at the same time. And it was this most incredible cosmic galactic like healing temple. It was like this with columns and this pool of what I call liquid light. It was like this bath of immersion, and I was taken to this place with these beings and immersed into this liquid light, this pool of water. And it was like an acidic bath. It began to burn away and it felt so good. The pain that I had been carrying that was transforming and being released into the pureness of this light and this love to take away the imprints. And it was the most healing thing I've ever experienced. I sometimes now, when I feel like I really need a healing like that, I imagine myself going to that place even now. And so from that place, I felt like, okay, I understood it's a human imprint, and it helped me to restructure. And from that place, I no longer felt like I was more human in with the human experience. It felt like in that cleansing, healing, acidic bath that burned away human imprints was as though it returned me more to my higher self, my soul self, where I didn't feel so trapped and traumatized by my personality and all the pain that I felt. So from that place of that healing, I was brought back to the original three beings to continue the review, and I was able to see it from an entirely different perspective. I saw clarity, I saw complete perfection, and how I participated in that creation. So from this higher understanding, the full life review, it transformed into an additional three beings appearing to me. And from those three beings, they showed me this other place. And so with this deep understanding, oh my gosh, I chose this. I chose those people. I chose the situation. I knew in advance that this could possibly happen, that I might have this experience. And I knew that it was not a victim, that I myself had signed up for it. And with that greater understanding, oh my gosh, then I was able to see the connection of all things. I felt such deep love and compassion for people that I had once saw as my perpetrator, where I was once a victim, that I didn't feel that anymore because of this understanding. And these other three beings, a new set of three appeared. And these three beings were able to show me the greater, bigger picture of our reality. And in that space, again, it was as though the place transformed, but we were simultaneously brought together. This place was different though, because it was like being on the very edge of the cosmos. And I could see where galaxies and stars were super, super close. And I was taken to this field, and it was like, we call it a loma, a small hill. And I could see these rolling hills for as far as the eye could see, of green of every color. And while I was standing there with my one guide and my other three beings, that it was knowing that this was our sea of souls. Below this valley, I could see this vast field of flowers of every color. And I was told that it was like they were souls that I was meant to touch. And I didn't understand what that meant, of how could one person make that kind of a difference, what looked like thousands of flowers for as far as the eye could see. And all of a sudden it was like this wind came to, and all of the flowers began to sway together. And I understood and suddenly saw like their roots were underneath, and how their roots were all connected. And that the flowers, even though they seemed like they were different and separate, were all one. So it was a way for them to show me in a way that I could understand what our soul family, our soul group is all about. So I was so excited because I could see and feel this beauty. I could feel this excitement as a soul of, oh my God, I want to do this. From that position at the top of the hill, looking at it, I had an understanding that something important was on earth, that I chose to be part of it for some reason. I felt like I had a purpose and that I was part of it. And from that higher perspective, I understood, I want this. Then I felt like this excitement of wanting to be part of it. So then, with this new understanding and perspective, it was this deep desire of, oh my God, I want to be on earth. I want to be part of this. This is why I chose to come here. So, from that perspective and seeing that most beautiful connection, my one ever present, beautiful angelic guide, another three beings appeared. And from that other place with these new three beings, I began a training. It was as though they were working with me at a soul level, and I began to do so much more deeper work. I understood why I was here, why I was born to the parents I was, that I myself chose it. I even saw a version of myself before I came into life. It was like the me before I made the jump to incarnate. And I had a difficult birth, by the way. I was born 3 weeks late. My mom's water bag broke, and I saw where I did not want to be born, that I was still struggling at that moment, that I was still trying to make a decision. There was a collapse of time on the other side where I saw the version of myself in this pool, like before, like it looked like a basin. And the soul was like, I don't know if I want to go there. I don't know if I want to do that. I know it's going to be hard. And on one side of this most incredible like pool of, and it seemed like a basin. And then there was the new me, and this point in time facing my before my born self. And so from this perspective, I told my original first self, it's okay, go ahead and jump, because I'm going to come back here and we're going to do this. So it was like these two aspects of myself, if that even makes sense. So it's like my version on the other side in my NDE helped give my first self permission and reassurance to jump. And then from that place, it was like everything seemed to make sense. Everything collapsed. And then I found myself training, understanding soul, mission, purpose, why we're here, what we are, what we're here to do, what was taken from us. And then I had this insatiable sense of mission and purpose, and I was so excited. So it felt to me that had an entire lifetime of training to prepare me for my return. Time on the other side does not exist. It felt like in my NDE, I was there for an entire lifetime. And then to come back right where I started, my gosh, that was probably the most difficult thing. And I'm probably skipping ahead here, but in that moment of my training and understand for my return, it was an awakening of the things that I had forgotten. And it was as though I was looking at parts of my life that was going to happen. And I myself was working with my lifetime to set up things to help me on my path so that I wouldn't feel alone when I returned. So, with that final deep training that seemed like a lifetime, I felt prepared enough. So, in that basin where I met my pre-infant self before I jumped in, my natal self, and then my new self with all my knowledge and my wisdom and training, my reawakening and remembering, the reset for and the purpose for my NDE. And with all of that, then I came back. And I came back with a deep purpose and all of this still inside. And before that, though, it was this most beautiful reunion of all of the 12 beings. So I had 4 sets of 3 beings helping me with these different process. And I had my one being, which is like in sense like the 13th, but there's these 4 sets of 3 that helped with each phase, and each 3 made up a part of my divine wise counsel. And with that reunion of all of them present, then it like disappeared. I found myself in the original place of this vast white. And the difference this time was that the Blessed Mother, Mother Mary, La Virgencita, is that she was more like solid and she looked like more human-like. In that place, she was holding a baby and my mother was standing beside her, and she held the baby and kissed the baby and handed the baby to my mom. And in that moment, I had a memory from what seemed like a distant ago and was like, I had a baby. I can't leave my baby motherless on the day that she's born. And I began a panic. And I knew that when I saw her kiss the baby, handing her to my mother, it was this, I have to return. So it felt like I panicked and like I turned and began to run in the other direction. And it felt like I jumped and took a leap off of a 10-story building and crash landed into my physical body. And then I felt this heaviness, this pain, and I could not move. I could not breathe. I felt like I was choking, and the only thing that can come out was one single tear. And I felt somebody cradling my head and whispering in my ear as though angelic, saying, it's going to be okay. And shortly after, they took out the intubation, but I still could not move. And I remember convulsing. Now, they stabilized me. They still had the surgery. So I did have the tubal ligation, but I had a very, very difficult time coming out of the anesthesia. And then I had to really understand. My mom took one look at me because she was present at the birth, and they brought her into the room of recovery to try to help me come back and settle and recuperate. And she asked me, the Spanish term is mija, ¿qué pasó? Like, daughter, what happened to you? And I knew in that moment, I don't know. But I just said I felt like I was buried alive. So my first return was very fear-filled because I didn't fully understand what happened. And then began the journey of my return and the remembering. So I'm going to pause here for a moment because you probably have questions about that before I continue on with other stuff. But when I recount it, it feels as though I'm there still.
It's so beautiful. And I have to say, it's one of the most complex, I think, and intense NDEs that I have heard, I think, and the knowledge that you've had in the experience, but then the rockiness, if you will, after return, and, you know, combined with a brand new baby, and then the recovery after surgery. I mean, so much to deal with. How did you make sense of the NDE? Did you think of it afterwards?
Thank you for the question. The very first thing was, what happened? And I could feel this inner shake. It felt as though I had experienced something so traumatic, but I could not fully remember. It was for the very first maybe 6 months up to about a year, I had what I called, and they were violent to me at the moment because they were so different and overpowering that for the first 6 months especially, it was like I would fall asleep and I would find myself on the other side and it would not make sense to me. And I was very fear-filled. And so they felt like these very violent moments, and they were very unsettling. I thought I was going crazy. I had nobody to understand. I didn't even know about a near-death experience at the time. I didn't know about any of this. I didn't know who to talk to. The only one that I really did was my husband at the time and my mom. And my mom would just reassure me that, you know, God is good and that there has to be a plan. I began to work with it. I learned that after we have the ND, we have an opportunity, just like we do in life, to choose to learn and grow and seek. And because it felt so off to me, it was very so different. I was having this very deep inner world that didn't match what I was experiencing the outside. It was not making sense. I wanted to be back over there. They thought I was going through postpartum depression, and a part of it I'm sure I was. But I also felt like I made the wrong decision. I felt like all this peace and bliss and everything I felt on the other side was not what I was feeling in the moment. And what I did not understand is that I still had a lot to clean up. I still had a lot that I had to address and learn and understand, and the NDE was just the catalyst. It was only the experience to get me to go in that direction. So when they talk about I call it a course correction. I was not doing what my soul had committed to. I was so committed to living a normal life, having the job, having the kids, having the husband, and just that's my life. But there was this deep calling to serve in some way and to understand soul and spirit. And so when I first arrived, it was not good. It did not make sense to me. And that's what pushed me to seek. So when I began to really want to understand what happened to me, what am I feeling? Where is it that I am going at night? Why do I feel this? Why am I having these images? So when I first returned, it's not like I had full memory and everything made sense and it was like, oh, this is so perfect. It was as though I had arrived from this most incredible dream that I needed to make sense because it felt so. To me, for a long time, it felt like, did that even happen? What even happened? Why is it that this is happening to me? Now, what happened to me is that I realized about 6 months after that I started to know things that I should not know. That I started to pick up on things and know things about people that I shouldn't. I began to see things and feel things, and then like I would imagine something would happen, and then a day or two later it would. And then I began to be like, oh gosh, what is this? And then I began to like almost hear people's thoughts or feel their feelings. And I worked full time. And when I finally did return to work 3 months after, people began to come and talk to me and ask me questions. And I would share with them things and they'd be like, how did you know that? And I'd be like, I don't know. So then I realized that something more was beginning to happen with me, that I knew things, understood things, felt things, could see things, and intuitively. So because I was working full time, I had meetings and there would be complete strangers. When it happened with a complete stranger for the first time, I began to have images of an experience that they were having, passing by this shelf, seeing a picture and this like vase. Well, I recognized that afterwards it happened to be the person's remains because they were cremated and it had a picture of the person. When I was sharing things and images and of their life of a person that I did not even know, and he cried and he said, I had always wanted to see somebody like a medium to connect with my partner, but I didn't believe in it. And I was so shocked, saying, this makes sense to you? Like the things that I'm saying, this that you understand? And when I began to realize that with a complete stranger, after that meeting, I sat in my car, my vehicle, for probably about a good half hour to an hour, just sobbing and then praying and asking, what is happening to me? What is this even about? Because I was born Spanish Catholic and I was told we don't mess with these things. And I thought, and when I began to share about it, I was told these are things we shouldn't mess with. Then I began to have like a sense of fear about why this is happening. But I know that I felt such pure love, such connection. I could see the healing that would happen. I would feel this energy of love and peace come over. And I knew this cannot be evil. This is pure. This is good. It is bringing clarity. It's helping bring peace. And so I began to say, okay, because for the longest time, I prayed for it to be taken away from me. Now, let me explain something here. By the time this began happening, this was already 6 years after my NDE. I had 6 years in between that moment to have very selfish, personal understanding and seeking for myself. So I went to my church, I went to my mom, I went to my grandmother, and then to be able to try to understand what is happening. I looked, I searched, I saw, I was trying to understand, and nothing really could help me until I finally said, okay, if you're not going to take this away, then teach me. And I began to feel a presence stronger with me that was the same energy that I felt in my NDE, that divine, wise, guide, that angelic guide always with me. And I began to ask out loud and pray and to seek that guidance. And my life has completely transformed since then in understanding what we are. So it was a process for me to work with it. This is why I say that people don't have to have a traumatic death experience in order to feel our connection on the other side. Many people have spiritually transformative experiences where they are gifted the experience of their connection to the other side without having to have a death trauma. And the reason is because we are all connected on the other side. The greater, bigger part of us is already there. And only a part of our consciousness is streaming here. I didn't know that immediately, and I couldn't put it in those words. So again, my NDE took place 24 and a half years ago. I have worked with it consistently every single day in the desire to understand and to serve. And so what I am today is a result of all of that. And I know that I can finally say that there was a period after my return that I thought I made the wrong choice and that it was such a struggle that I thought if I knew it was going to be this difficult, I don't know if I could have had the ability to endure all of it. And now I'm so excited. I'm so glad that I am here. I can finally be on the other end because I still had to go through all my challenges. I still had to learn just like everybody else, but I had a different set of tools to use. And that's what I had to remember. Because when I felt I came back, it felt like my life had been dismantled and dismembered, ripped apart. And from there, I got to remember who I am, remember and reassemble myself. And that's what all of us are doing. And I know that those of us who've had this experience are intended to just be a holder of light on a path that we are all on. There's nothing that makes me better or more advantaged other than having had this really traumatic death experience and then learning how to use it, learning how to enhance my spiritual living while being alive. And this is one of the most extraordinary times. Now, I don't want to skip ahead. I'm going to pause here, but I wanted to be here because we are in a shift in time that is unprecedented. And now I know why I truly wanted to be here. So I'm going to pause there, kind of preface it with that and let you ask any questions you want about that. But yeah.
So I definitely want to go deeper into why is it so exciting to be here right now? Because, you know, if I just turn on the TV, and I say this in almost every interview, if I were to turn on the TV, it would sound like the world isn't in a good place. And yet I'm hearing that there's a shift coming and that it's a great thing and that we all chose to be here at this time to do the work that we're doing. So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Okay, thank you for this. So we just came out of a full moon total lunar eclipse. These are times that we have to understand that we are immersed in and part of a natural rhythm of space and time. We are a most magnificent creature, a being that can hold spirit and infuse. When we can hold spirit by awakening our soul. Soul and spirit are like two different things. We are this divine spark that can infuse and bring in this connection to unity, which is spirit. So we are meant to be a spiritually awakened being, a soul-fused spirit being, which is an entire other type of human on the planet. Our very own structure, our DNA and our genetics are actually being activated. That we call what's junk DNA is not junk DNA, and so many people are talking about this, but there's so much more capability that has been dormant inside of us. This is an energy that is living, breathing, it is electrical, it is activated. In this time, right now, We have never experienced anything like this. This is a 4.4 billion year cycle in the creation of our galaxy. In the Kali Yuga, it is a measurement of time and the cycles of time that the Maya were very attuned to. What happens on the greater, bigger cosmic scale is also very personal to us. We have separated as a human. We think we're separate. We think that we're just here by happenstance, that we're not affected by anything, when the majority of creatures naturally on this planet are attuned to the cycles of, say, the moon. Turtles know exactly where and when and how to get to the place where they have to lay their eggs at a very specific time, no matter where they are on the earth. There are natural cycles that humans have disconnected to. We don't feel our connection into nature, and therefore we feel separate. We feel separate, we feel alone, isolated, when we are the most interconnected species, and that is by design. That is why when we turn on the TV, it's propaganda to be able to attune the masses to a layer of what I call negative pollution. Negative pollution creates a fear inside of ourself. We have a most incredible power inside of us. The soul inside of us is not necessarily a thing. It is a portal. A portal. What we go through when we cross is our own sacred portal. We have access to divinity inside of ourselves, but every single thing in our world, including unfortunately many of our religions, make us disconnect from ourselves and think that we have to have something or someone outside of us to guide us. And that is the biggest false, the biggest lie that is on this planet. Every single one of us carries as a spark of the divine within, and that is what is being used as negative pollution. Every single one of us has emotion. We are broadcasters of energy. You can walk into a room that an argument just happened, even after the argument, and you can be like, oh, you can cut the tension with a knife. You can be in somebody's environment and know that they're not right, and they're like, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm good. Everything's good. When you know instinctively, because we feel, we have disconnected from a layer of ourself. We have disconnected from our own soul. We feel that we are isolated, and this is why it's most exciting to be on the planet. Now, we live in a world of duality that is always trying to create balance. So even though the media shows that this massive heightened, chaos and fear and destruction and harm and hurt, okay, because they want us to feel in fear, because it creates this energy that this other living force on the planet that has been trying to suppress us for over 200,000 years. We are beings created on this planet, okay, that are part of something bigger than ourselves that we don't understand. There has been a fight of light and dark, good and evil, right and wrong, the angels. There's something more that we instinctively feel, but has been kept hidden from us. As long as they keep us subdued, dumbed down, numbed out, and disconnected into fear, then we're not going to fight. We're not going to struggle. We're not going to step up to what's rightfully ours. Every single person on this earth at this time has everything that is needed in order to succeed and thrive. But there are people on the planet that thrive on suppressing and harming others. And that is the energy that this darker force wants on the planet. We are here to be the light bringers,